The federal government has announced the approval of a 758 billion naira bond to settle long-standing pension arrears, which have accumulated over several years due to the transition from the defined benefit to the contributory pension scheme. The decision was announced as part of resolutions reached at the Federal Executive Council meeting on Tuesday. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has approved 80 billion naira for the reconstruction of the Alao Dam in Borno State. State House correspondent Adesua Omoran reports.
It is the second Federal Executive Council meeting of 2025, held just one day after the inaugural session of the year, which took place after a break that began on December 18 of 2024. Ministers gathered to review key decisions that could shape the country's development agenda for the year. Among the major decisions was the approval of a 758 billion naira bond aimed at settling long-standing pension arrears.
There was an approval for the government through the Debt Management Office to raise a federal government bond of about 758 billion naira. And that is to clear up the backlog of pension liabilities owed various categories of pensioners who are owed funds under the defined benefit system that preceded the defined contributory pension scheme that came into force in 2004.
Alongside the pension resolution, the government also secured 30 million euros in concessional financing to address student housing in the country, while approving the National Single Window Project to streamline import and export processes.
A 30 million euro financing, long-term concessional financing by Agence France de Développement, the French development agency, which is supporting student housing in conjunction with Family Homes Fund Limited as the partner and implementer. It is for student accommodation, mainly student tertiary accommodation at project sites throughout the country to provide sustainable and clean energy-based accommodation for students.
An interministerial committee set up in September of last year has also reviewed 35 dams across Nigeria. Their work focused on improving water supply, flood control, irrigation, and fish farming. One critical finding was the need to rebuild the Alao Dam in Borno State.
The Alao Dam, which is very critical, which has some challenges as a result of flooding that occurs on the 10th of September last year. So the designs, analysis and everything of that particular dam, of Alao Dam, was done and presented to the subcommittee. And that request was made before Mr. President. And Mr. President graciously gave an approval of 80 billion for the reconstruction and expansion of Alao Dam in Maiduguri, Borno State.
The dam's collapse last year caused devastating flooding, displacing thousands and worsening the humanitarian crisis in the northeast. Government reports estimate over 1 million people were affected by the disaster. Other ministries that received approvals include Works, Creative Economy, and the Federal Capital Territory. A total of 67 memos were considered for today. But beyond the approvals, the government is reiterating its focus on reform and delivering results in 2025.
Government of President Bola Tinubu is listening to the public and ensuring that the economy comes back to life once again. And the reforms are working, as we have seen from the briefing from the Honorable Minister of Economy, Finance, and Coordinating Minister for the Economy. And then what you also heard from the Minister of Works, Minister of Health, and the other ministers here. The economy is actually beginning to turn the corner.
From the presidential villa, Adesua Omoruan, Arrears News.
All right, okay, so more money on the table, Rufai. Some going to infrastructure development, but also a bond for pensions. What do you make of this story?
Okay, so federal government has had that backlog as regards pensions for a while. Those that were coming from the defined benefit scheme, to contributory scheme and all of that. So that's why you see that a lot of pensioners even have problems today, because there's a part of their own money the government ought to pay, and that's why those even on the contributory spend are not getting a release. So federal government is saying they want to use bond to be able to sort out this. The question is, okay, so it's obvious we don't have the money on ground, really. So bond, then how would this bond be appropriated? Because the bond is a debt.
Yeah.
It's just a delayed payment for the future. The bond is a debt, so we have to also keep paying that. So we keep seeing that our bonds keep getting up. We keep taking more money for many things. We also talked about the French agencies, 30 million concessionary loans for student accommodation and all of that. Okay, that's another debt. Let's add that to the fray so that when the debt management office appropriates all what we have in exposure, we'll be able to see. There's been a talk about collecting more debts. We are 142 trillion up. This will also increase it even more. Question is, the 80 billion for Alao Dam, I'm happy about it, but I'm also very ambivalent. Over 400 million was set aside for Alao Dam all this while. What was done with the money? And it's not only Alao Dam that's the ticking time. What about Lagdo Dam? A year before, we had the stress of Lagdo Dam. Last year, okay, probably we did better. When are we going to solve the problem of Lagdo Dam? The embankment and the buffer were supposed to be in on our end. What about that? Is it because Alao Dam was a case of crisis? Then about the roads, Mr. Omar, you said that it's going to take some portions of the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road that needs to be completed. That's another couple of billions going on as regards that. The question is initially, what was supposed to be done to complete that project? Then a couple of roads in the FCT, yes, new areas being opened up and all of that around the Clinton Drive area and all of that. I think there's a bypass bridge that will be coming up there, a couple of billions being earmarked. The question is, all of these billions being earmarked, it's good to announce and say, approved in FEC. FEC approved, it does not mean money will come out. And I think we've talked about the story of the Ministry of Health, where over 200 billion was approved in the budget, but guess what? About only 23 billion was released. So the question is, do we have the money on ground to be able to do these laudable projects? And even when we get the money to do them, hope they will be done well. Hope we will not have case of variation here and there that will take the off out of this contract and not be able to deliver all of these contracts. Yeah, because yes, they are very good ones. We are happy and excited about them. But it's not just about announcing that, okay, FEC has approved it. We want to see also the money that goes with it. We're also going to be having a lot of, I think, short videos on the campaign for Nigeria everywhere by the Ministry of Tourism. We're also having this training facility for people and funding and all of that. Yeah. That's another very good one. But the question is, how will these monies be dispersed? And for the Ministry of Tourism, can we have more partnerships across board to also lessen, the burden of government? Because the tourism industry said they want to plow back over 100 billion into the economy. Yes, it's plausible. But how are we going to do it? I think these are the questions we should ask.
The big question is how. Dr. Bati.
Okay, I was saying yesterday, because this is similar to the same subject that we discussed yesterday, but I think it's understandable. The second day of the Federal Executive Council meeting was presided over yesterday, so it's still a living subject. That it's not enough for the Federal Executive Council to reach resolutions to award monies or contracts or projects and all of that. What is more important is the level of performance at the end of the day. Part of the problem that we have is that, look, it's habitual for ministers, to come after FEC meeting to say this has been approved, that has been approved, and they will be euphoric about it. But look, the main thing about the process is about the input and the output and the impact. Input, output, impact. If you say we're making this input, what is the output? After the output, what is the impact on society? That's what we measure. That's what we evaluate in the policy-making process at the end of the day. Now, if that sounds like theory, it seems to me that at the level of principle, it's a good idea to say that the government wants to take care of the backlog of pension arrears. It was the Obasanjo administration that introduced the contributory pension scheme to create a private sector, third-party involvement in the delivery of pensions. Now, what they had before them was the defined pension scheme. When that transition was made, it was, again, on account of the fact that pensions were not being paid. The Nigerian government could not fund the pensions. So I think it was the Fola Adeola committee. It was Mr. Fola Adeola who led that contributory pension scheme process originally. So we had the 2004 Pension Reforms Act. Then it was amended in 2014. But that also has had its problems because, you know, we've had reports of pension being mismanaged even under the new order. But to go back to the defined benefit scheme, there were many civil servants who till date, soldiers, Nigeria Airways, who have not been paid pensions. Many of them have died. We used for many years to have, you know, within this media space, you know, opportunities to just lament and comment on the fact that pensioners, people who have served for 35 years or have reached the mandatory age of 60 years, were queuing up. Some of them were sleeping at welfare pension offices where they got nothing at the end of the day. So at the level of principle, it seems to me a good idea that the Tinubu administration wants to go back to address that wrong, because the thing is about injustice. A pensioner deserves his pension just as a worker deserves his wages. And it's a very bad spectacle that in Nigeria, people will serve their country and years after, they will not get their pension. Well, what is the level of this pension now? Should we have, with regard to this, with this initiative, a triple lock system, which they have in the United Kingdom, which, you know, is something they use in the US? But unfortunately, the government is going to borrow money. The DMO, Debt Management Office, will raise bonds. So we're back to borrowing. But at the individual level, those pensioners, you know, I think, would think that this is some respite if it is well managed. And what we would demand in the process is transparency and accountability. Absolutely. And as I said yesterday, not rhetoric to say we are going to do this. When they do it, we will see it. The process, we will assess and evaluate it. The second thing that I think came out of that meeting that I would like to comment on very quickly is the decision to say by April, the Federal Ministry of Works will take over the uncompleted part of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Now, we've been on that Lagos-Ibadan Expressway with about 4 governments now. This, again, is part of the bad story. Now, a phase of it was awarded to Julius Berger, I think from the roundabout, from the Shagamu interchange to Ibadan. Now, and then the other side, the RCC or whatever. Okay, RCC and Julius Berger. One party has been able to complete its part. Another party has not been able to complete its part. Now, I am urging the Ministry of Works to also conduct an investigation. What happened to that Lagos-Ibadan Expressway project? The original design, since the Obasanjo time, was to turn that corridor into, you know, a corridor for development, for economic growth. There are a lot of politicking. One minister of works will come, he will bring his own contractors. Another person will come, there will be quarrel over contractors. I suspect a lot of corruption involved in the management of that corridor. But if the Tinubu government is going to deliver and achieve the original objectives of the rehabilitation of that road as spelled out, I think that will be important for economic growth and create jobs, as Minister Umahi was saying yesterday. Minister Umahi has shown that he has the capacity to deliver, you know, expressly and pointedly, as you have seen with the Third Mainland Bridge in Lagos and the little progress that has been made along the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, shorn of the politics, you know, and the other issues attending it. Well, perhaps he will be able to put an end to this uncompleted, you know, jeremiad with the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway.
So in the past few days, or at least last 2 days, we have talked about almost over ₦1 trillion in terms of monies being talked about and okayed by the Federal Executive Committee to different ministries, bulk of which now we've seen will be going to the offsetting of pension arrears paid to Nigerian pension workers. And this would be done through the issuing of a bond. Simply put, it will be through borrowing. And we've already elaborated on that point already. then would have about over 200 billion naira going to different road infrastructure. One thing I must say with regards to the road infrastructure, as we started talking about it yesterday, is the spread of the work. You know, oftentimes we talk about how it must, when it comes to the geographical locations, we've seen work being done in the north, work being done in the south, work being done in the east and the west. So in terms of balance, quite fair. One of the things we also must highlight is the awarding of contracts. Yes, the minister tried to talk about how, you know, the process would be transparent, tried to mention the names of some of the contractors who'd be working on this road. But one thing we want to also avoid is the hula baloo that happened with the Julius Berger contract and the Abuja-Kano road. I think that's something else that we have to look at, because there was that debacle around InfoQuest, how long they'd been in business, to what extent they bidded for that contract, how transparent the process was. Because one of the things we talk about is when a lot of money is allocated like this, the opportunities for activities that are not overboard or for due process not to be followed. So it's great to see money being channeled to infrastructure projects as opposed to recurrent expenditure or wasteful spending. But it's also important to ensure that the money that has been approved will be used in the manner in which it was approved for, and would be fair in terms of the awarding of contracts. And that's why I think eyes should be on the Federal Ministry of Works. I know we have a body that's responsible for oversight for government projects, I think headed by Hadiza Bala Usman. It would be great to understand, to see how far the monies that have been allocated in the past have been, you know, how efficient they've been, budget performance, as we've talked about, so that it's not just another day of announcing of this amount of money going here and there and nothing to show for it at the end of the day. Something else I would like to highlight is also the approval of the infrastructure to support the national single window. I mean, this is supposed to be a game changer for trade and to be able to leverage the African continental free trade area, especially from the Nigerian perspective, where we have one portal for trade activities and it's supposed to potentially be able to bring to the economy $2.7 billion. It's great to see that following conversation since its launch last year, it's finally going to get some money to begin that process in earnest. So a number of things, and our eyes are going to be on the ball to ensure that, you know, with regards to the monies being allocated, being spent, it is done judiciously and there's performance when it comes to that, and actually due process is followed for the allocation of and awarding of contracts.